All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm told that we will be shortly joined by another expert. In fact, we're now joined by Mr. Manoj Joshi, who's a distinguished fellow at ORF. Thank you very much, Mr. Joshi, for joining us. What do you make of what transpired last night in the Oval Office? Many foreign policy experts saying that this was unprecedented, but it was not altogether surprising given the kind of statements that Donald Trump has made in the past with respect to Russia and, of course, the Ukrainian leader in particular?
Well, to put it short, it's a debacle for both the United States and for Ukraine. Meaning the United States should not underestimate the consequences of this conversation, which was unprecedented, between a president of the United States and another president, and all of it in public, meaning in front of television cameras. So I think we have seen the explosion, but I think the fallout is still to be become clear. But nevertheless, it's an extremely serious development. And I don't think the only person who must be celebrating would be Vladimir Putin in Moscow.
That's a very valid point made, and we'll come to that, Mr. Joshi. But when you mentioned that there will be ramifications, the overall ramifications are not out yet. But what are you anticipating will happen next? Because what we understand is also that Marco Rubio has asked for an apology from Zelenskyy. The White House spokesperson has also castigated Zelenskyy and stated that Zelenskyy refuses to recognize the practical reality of this war. So what happens next now?
Well, Zelenskyy, not surprisingly, went into the meeting thinking that he is talking to an ally of Ukraine. Meaning here is a country, the United States was an ally of Ukraine. It has supported the Ukrainians with weapons, with financial aid. But on the other hand, when he went into the meeting, what did he find? When he found that you had a very hostile environment. In particular, there was special hostility from the Vice President of the United States. In his X account, the vice president virtually seems to be J.D. Vance, seems to be setting the grounds for a Ukrainian surrender. Meaning there's no concession has been so far offered by Vladimir Putin, whereas everything has been, all the demands have been placed on Ukraine. Now for Ukraine, this is definitely a shock, because here we are talking of a country which was allied to them. See, and this whole business that, we have given you so much aid, we have given you, so you have to repay us. It makes the whole thing, somewhat base. The point is a lot of the aid, and this is what I'd like to point out, a lot of the American aid that was given to Ukraine was given in the form of products that were produced by US companies. So a lot of the money went back to the US. And of course, Mr. Trump made the ridiculous assertion that the US had given $350 billion worth of aid. Actually, they have given $100 billion worth of aid. So, the whole thing, the systematic lies, the effort to upstage Mr. Zelenskyy in a White House meeting, the whole thing has left a very bad taste. And the role of Mr. J.D. Vance in all this is extremely questionable.
Right, Mr. Joshi, again, very valid points that you have made with respect to this, deal which was supposed to happen. And of course, we've been talking for a very long time that it was the US which will eventually perhaps be likely to be able to broker a deal between Russia and Ukraine. But it seems that now, perhaps there needs to be another person or another side, which really needs to sort of pacify tempers on both the sides. But there are reports, Mr. Joshi, that suggest that the Trump administration is considering ending all shipments of military aid to Ukraine after that meeting. The world's already been, as you would know, been reeling under shocks of the war on inflation and supply chain front. So if this happens, this doesn't really bode well for not just Ukraine or, for related stakeholders, but for anybody in the world, because it only exacerbates the inflation situation.
Absolutely. Meaning right now we are only seeing the first stages in Mr. Trump's economic outlook towards the world. Yesterday, he has announced a whole set of new tariffs. The reciprocal tariff system is yet to come in. I think it will come in April. And so, yes, certainly the world is looking at a geopolitical disaster as well as an economic disaster. There is no doubt about that. And so far, there seems to be no kind of restraint on Mr. Trump. And I certainly hope that there will be some cooler heads, that they will be able to at least resolve this issue, the Ukraine issue, through some back channel diplomacy and diffuse the situation, which is certainly not good for the West. It's not good for Europe. It's not good for the US. It's certainly not good for Ukraine. As far as the tariffs issue concerns, I think it's yet to play out because the tariffs are yet to be instituted, and the worst consequences of that will be there, will unfold in the future.
Absolutely, Mr. Joshi. One final question before we let you go, and since you brought out two very important words, that is a disaster and diplomacy. So let me combine these words and ask you one final question. Are there more disasters on the anvil with respect to the US, United States foreign policy? And what does this really say about United States approach to its foreign policy, and of course how it's going to handle diplomacy and its alliances across the world?
Well, essentially what is happening so far is that the Trump administration is turning the post-Cold War US policy inside out. The post-Cold War policy of the United States was dependent on keeping the two flanks of Eurasia under their control, which is Japan, South Korea on one side, and Western Europe on the other. Now, Mr. Trump seems to be reaching out to the heartland of Eurasia, which is Russia and China. Again, China is the unknown factor because Trump has not yet begun to look at the Asian policy in any detail till now. So I think in the future, we could still see some shocks, particularly India. If Trump tries to reach out to China in the way as he has done with Mr. Putin, if there is a deal, if there's a China-US deal, that could have serious consequences for us.
Right, Mr. Joshi. So this really makes the United States policy and especially its foreign policy extremely, extremely volatile and something that cannot really be comprehended at this point in time, given the kind of statements that Donald Trump has made ever since he won that US presidential election. Thank you very much for joining us and sharing your thoughts with us right here on ET Now.
Thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, with that, it's a wrap on this edition of News Now. Lots more news and updates continue on the other side of this short break. Don't go anywhere.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.